case around you, but I see kids all the time just flying drones around. I think that could also be it. Also, it's just like high school kids who are just flying some of those remote drones.
Sure. I mean, the idea that like there's an Iranian mothership off the coast of like Jersey, it to me just sounds insane, to the point where I heard that and I was like, well, now I don't believe anything.
There's nothing interesting here.
No. Hey, good evening. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown live before lock. Fun one tonight. Battle of the NFC West. Yeah. Niners aren't dead yet.
Nope.
If they lose this game, they're dead. They're dead. So, Rams win it. They got a 50% chance of making the playoffs. So it's a fun one. Greg Ehrenberg, what's up, brother?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was talking to you a little bit about this. So you know what's going on with me right now, which is the big thing on my mind. I just had what I think was a tree, evidence to believe it was a tree branch that fell on my windshield, which got shattered. So that is going to be a project for me tomorrow, trying to figure out how I could get some of my content covered so I could go get that taken care of. And then to compound it, Jakob Poeltl got ruled out post-lock for the NBA slate. So I'm in shambles right now, Laffy. I am not running good right now.
Yeah, that sucks, man. It's one of those nights. Maybe things will turn around for Showdown. At least look, here's a great thing about DFS. Excuse me. There's always another out, right? There's always another way out until there isn't. But for now, let's pretend there is. It's a fun game. We've gotten pretty lucky with primetime games this year. Like last year, because I do every primetime Showdown. I do every primetime live before lock. Gajeski and I have been going back to, 4 years now doing every strategy show. I was doing, Neil and I were doing the Showdowns for the most part. We've had some terrible Showdown games in the past couple of years, because if you remember, first it was every Showdown was Russell Wilson, and then every Showdown was Zach Wilson because Aaron Rodgers got hurt, and I'm not sure it would have made a difference anyway.
Yeah, so a big part of it is the NFL always takes stands. They try to figure out who they believe is going to be the best teams each year that the public wants to watch, and they're terrible at projecting which teams are going to be good and which teams aren't going to be. And that's why, 2 years ago, I think we had, this is just going off memory, but it was Russell Wilson in primetime for the first 5 weeks of the year, something like nuts. That. And that Broncos team, they weren't just bad. They were unwatchably bad with a terrible offense. And you were just stuck watching that team over and over again. Same with the Jets last year after Rodgers got hurt. Not that the NFL could have known that Rodgers was going to blow out his Achilles on like the third play of the season, but it has been a thing. People talk about the Madden curse, but not enough people talk about the NFL curse, and that if you are put on a lot of primetime games, you're probably going to suck unless you're the Chiefs.
It's the way it feels. Yeah, like the fact that Houston had 0 primetime games last year, and CJ Stroud was one of the most electric players in the league. It's just the way it is. But then you'll have other rookies who they're like, yeah, let's just give him 6 of them and see how that works. You're right. They're bad at judging that. Anyway, we don't have a ton of time today, so let's get this out of the way and talk football. Hit that thumbs up, atone for your sins this evening. If you don't mind, it goes a long way. We appreciate you greatly for it. I mean that. I wouldn't bullshit you here on Live Before Lock. It helps us feed the algorithm. And of course, subscribe, because both of those things are entirely free to do, 100% free to do. And if you hate it, just unsubscribe. We will refund your misery. Say goodbye. You'll never hear from us again. I'm sure some of you would like to do that, but you're sucked in. Anyway, let's get into it. Fun game, NFC West, 2.5. It's really a 3-point spread. I had a feeling this would happen. If Bosa got ruled in, I thought you could, and then was it Dre? Who was it? Dre Greenlaw, I think. Dre Greenlaw, who hadn't played, he got ruled in as well. Like he hasn't played all season. Those little things, I think, because it was, minus 120 or minus 2.5, but then shaded to the Rams anyway. Or I'm sorry, shaded to the Niners on the 2.5, and any threes were shaded to the Rams. So I figured you get this Bosa news, it kind of would just settle into that 3 range. And that's what we're seeing, which makes sense here, Greg. And I think it's a really close, really tight matchup between, this Sean McVay and Shanahan team. Really close matchup.
The other funny thing about tonight is there's an injury that we are going to have to talk about what to make of Isaac Horrendo, because he was questionable, upgrade to probable. Now he's playing, which has massive, massive DFS implications. It has zero real life implications, really, though, because whether Guerrero was in or out, it was going to have a 0.0 point line movement to the spread or anything like that. Massively important for tonight in terms of how much is he going to play, how healthy is he going to look, and it is really hard to know because this is a game that is very, very high leverage for the 49ers. And even somebody like Bosa being in, I assume he's not 100%. It's just this is such a must-win game. It's like, what are you waiting for if you're not bringing him back or having him play today? So there's some of these injuries at this point of the season where it is really hard to know how healthy guys actually are.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Guerrero, like you said, doesn't move the line. But isn't it amazing? You could stick anyone in that run game this year. And it's not even like they're the best. They're better at run blocking than pass blocking because Trent Williams being out doesn't help. You can stick Isaac Guerrero with the limited opportunities he's had has been just as good as anybody, you know?
Yeah. The funny thing is the one guy who has not run well behind
McCaffrey.
the 49ers backfield, McCaffrey was dog shit when he played. He was terrible.
I know.
And everybody else's success in that backfield this year, just not Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, like, dude, Mason had multiple weeks where he won people tournaments.
Yeah.
You know?
Guerrero did last week.
Guerrero did last week, yeah. Guerrero was a great play last week, and I think he's a good play today. You're right. You know, does something flare up? He's dealing with a foot sprain on a short week, no less. But at the same time, I'm just not convinced they'd play him if he wasn't good to go. You can't really hedge that or try and get leverage over the field by playing Patrick Taylor. Because, I mean, maybe you could, but what's your best case scenario? A split there? Or you're just playing for Guerrero to get hurt early. If that's the case, then Patrick Taylor is going to look really good. But Taylor was preemptively priced up, so it doesn't really make a huge difference.
Yeah, Taylor to me is unplayable at this price point, especially considering how the 40, unless you are of the belief that Guerrero is just cooked injury wise, which I don't think is going to be the case. But if you strongly believe Guerrero just not going to be able to play effectively today, then sure, take a shot on a really low owned $7,400 Patrick Taylor. To me, he's too expensive for me to really want to be taking those kinds of shots on him. It would be a totally different conversation if he was still left at a fairly cheap price point, but that's just not the case. He's $7,400 over on DraftKings. He's $10,000 over on FanDuel, which I think makes the decision point a little bit easier, at least for myself. So Patrick Taylor, not someone I'm going to be taking shots on. And even if Guerrero was to not be 100% or go down at that price point, you still need Patrick Taylor to play really well. And that also wouldn't be a guarantee because you would still need Guerrero at that price tag for Taylor probably to get hurt somewhere in the early stages of the game. So Taylor, I agree, not somebody we really have to consider.
Yeah, and I'm looking now just at my exposures. I think probably my last run, and I'm going to start uploading these. Using the entry manager has made my life far less complicated, far easier. But for Guerrero, yeah, let's see. I'm getting less than I was this morning, but still I'm getting 30% captain or 30% flex, 6% captain. I actually thought I'd be getting more Guerrero than that, but it doesn't shock me though, because you still have Puka, you still have Purdy and Stafford, who both have solid passing props today in a pretty high total game. You have Deebo, you have Kittle, you have Juwan Jennings. I mean, let's not ignore Juwan Jennings. He's their wide receiver 1 right now. Truly, like he's their wide receiver 1. You have Cooper Kupp, you have Kyron Williams. It's absolutely loaded. So I don't think it's crazy to have relatively spread out exposures. The one guy that I'm getting like ultra exposure to at captain is Puka Nacua.
Yeah, and just one final point. But Nacua is my most rostered captain option as well, as the dust is settled in my lineups, and I also am uploading them right now. I have him in over 20% of my lineups, and the captain spot is I'm so unsure of what the health is going to be with Guerrero and how good he's going to look. I think this is a really easy situation to just align yourself with the field. We got him for around 6% ownership in the captain spot, about 30% ownership in the flex. That's what I'm doing. I'm just going to align myself with the field because it's an injury situation. There's a ton of uncertainty. I don't have a super strong take in terms of how healthy he's going to look today. If anybody tells you they do, I mean, I think they kind of have to be a little bit full of shit. I don't know how you can know in this scenario. I'll just align myself with the field and figure out elsewhere what I'm going to do with my lineups.
Dude, I'm literally as aligned with the field as you could get, to the point where, okay, I have 31.3 in the flex. We have his ownership in the contest generator pool at 30.4. At captain, I have 6%. We have him at 6.5. You can't get any closer than that. I think it's a good call by you. I'm not sure it's somebody I want to get massively overweight to, but also I'd actually throw this to you and to you guys in chat as well. There's going to be some people that take stands. And I think one of the more popular stands today is going to be a narrative-based play on Deebo Samuel with these, since deleted tweets talking about he's not getting the ball, but he's fine. And then Shanahan says water under the bridge. Yeah, sure, we'd prefer him to keep that in-house, but it's no big deal. And, we're always looking for ways to get him the ball more, which really, from a coach speak standpoint, is just a crock of shit. In the sense that Deebo could have a big game today. Does it mean that's because he's the squeaky wheel if they don't actually think that he's been productive? No. Like, if they don't think that he's been the guy, the top contributor, don't ignore this. George Kittle, in 11 games, has 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. Like, George Kittle's quietly on pace for a phenomenal, phenomenal season. Juwan Jennings has been a revelation. The run game has been good. Brock Purdy's been good. So it's not like everybody else, despite, this being I won't say lost season, but a disappointing season for the Niners. Everybody else has performed up to standard, Greg, in this, other than McCaffrey, of course, but he clearly wasn't fully healthy. What I'm saying is this isn't a collective effort or a collective poor effort across the board where the team just stinks this year. Deebo just hasn't. And by the way, I have a decent amount of Deebo today. Like I have over 10% at captain. I have 28% at flex, but I have a feeling that that's a guy people take stands on. There's a roundabout way of me saying this is not a slate where I'm trying to go insanely overweight on one specific player because there's so many good ones that could go off. The only one that I'm doing that with right now, and I'm letting the Sims kind of take the wheel, is going to be Puka Nacua at captain. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And as for Deebo, I pretty much agree with you. The reason I get to him in lineups, this is a favorable price point for his upside at $7,600, but I still have more exposure to Juwan Jennings. I have more exposure to George Kittle. You know what I think has helped George Kittle more than anything this season? He's been way healthier this year than he's been in previous years. Other seasons with George Kittle, he's dealt with severe injuries that he played through. He's been hobbled in some games where the 49ers have had to rely on him a little bit more as a blocker as opposed to using him in the passing game. And then also this year, just the early injury to Brandon Ayuk, in addition to Brandon Ayuk also kind of having a late start to the year because of the contract holdout situation. I think they just had to lean on George Kittle more. And with his health being better this year than it's been in previous years, because he has had a lot of different injury issues, I think that's just led to a really productive season for him that we haven't seen in a few years. So I don't have an issue with Deebo. I prefer George Kittle and Juwan Jennings.
For sure. And by the way, what is it? I chuck up the deuces said, well, with Garendo injury, Deebo could become de facto running back and TD vulture. So here's the interesting thing about that. And this is what has me, this is what has me not loving Deebo quite. By the way, someone just said Jakob Poeltl checked in.
Yeah, what's going on here?
So he is in fact in the game.
Yeah, they downgrade him to doubtful right before the game, took him out of the starting lineup, and now he's playing.
He probably had to fire one off.
But why would he be doubtful for that?
Because it might have been like, coach, listen, this doesn't seem good. Like we've all been there. Yeah, you've all been there where you're like this. Like it could have been seriously one where, like 15 seconds after you stand up, you're hightailing it back to the toilet. Could have happened to him 4 or 5 times, and he's like, you know what? I'm not sure this is going to go away. And then he knew he was emptied out. Hey, speaking from experience, mind you, this isn't exactly me checking into a basketball game, more so trying to make a 10 a.m. strategy show, but it's all the same. Anyway,
by the way, I'm actually checking. They did actually rule him out, and now he's playing.
Are you allowed to do that? I didn't think you could even do that.
They do whatever the hell they want.
I thought if a guy's ruled out, like then they're technically inactive. You can't just magically make them active.
It's the Wild West out there. There was one, the Wizards, it ended up being like a clerical error, but there was one, was it last Friday or something like that, where the Wizards listed, it was Bub Carrington is inactive. And it was out of nowhere. He's been somebody who's been a pretty prominent, no injury listing or anything, just healthy scratch, inactive. And I'm on live before lock. There's like 15 minutes left to go. I don't know what to do. I'm like, I'm just going to take this guy out of my lineups, and I'm playing Jared Butler in a bunch of lineups. I thought I had this great leverage spot, and the game starts and just Bub Carrington plays. It's so terrible, the injury reporting in the NBA.
That's so it's gotten worse, is what you're saying.
It's awful.
And they went through all of these like checks and balances to make it better, and it's just gotten worse. Anyway, with Deebo, what was it? I Chuck the Deuce said, yeah, he had said that they might do that with Deebo, like get him more work on the ground. That's the crazy thing about Deebo, Greg, and why I think he's been less valuable this year. Again, I still have Deebo. I have like 40% total Deebo. I have 13% at captain. I agree with you. That price point is good. And you know what? Narrative or not, you could still see a quality game here because he can still get it done. He's been so bad rushing the football this year. Like they've tried to get him going on the ground, and he's just been bad. Like he has not had, this is, I think you'll find this interesting. He has not had like one single breakaway rush. His longest rush of the year is 12 yards in week 10 against Tampa. Every other week, his longest rush is 8 yards. That's crazy compared to what we've seen in the past.
I should have clarified that too, because now you bring it up. I had said that everybody in the backfield has been able to run the football, but George Kittle. Another one is. Sorry, I said everybody but Christian McCaffrey. Another one is Deebo. Deebo's averaging 2.9 yards per carry this year. He averages 5.7 for his career. I think this has also been terrible injury risk management by giving a bunch of touches in the backfield to Deebo Samuel, who's been inefficient, and then also it seems like it might be taking away from how effective he's been in the passing game. So if Deebo does get extra work in the backfield, I mean, just think of it logically. If you are going to be getting, because he's never a guy who gets 20 touches or anything like that, Deebo Samuel. But let's say you're getting 12 touches from Deebo Samuel today. If instead of it being 10 receptions to 2 rushes and something like 8 rushes to 4 receptions, it's just less fantasy points you're scoring for both DraftKings and FanDuel, more significantly impacted on the DraftKings side of things. I still get myself to a decent amount of Deebo because of what his price point is. But going back to what I said before, if I'm building one lineup, George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, those are the pass catchers I want from the 49ers.
I'm with you. Kittle, Jennings, yeah. I mean, because it's really tough to get to guys like Ricky Pearsall or Cowling or any of those guys today. Like it's tough. I don't. Let me see if I have exposure to them just for you guys watching the show, and for my own sanity. Chris Conley. I think they're all active again, too. I looked at the inactives earlier. Let me just make sure. Let me make sure. There were no, like, real notable inactives for the Rams. Let's see. All right,
no,
Josh.
What was, while you're checking that, what was more relevant was who was active as opposed to who was inactive for today.
Definitely. Another thing, though, is that Abanikanda is inactive. Did they bring Keyshawn Vaughn back up? Let's see. Yes. Okay. I figured they would have. All right. So that means that it's Garendo, Keyshawn Vaughn, and not Abanikanda, but Patrick Taylor. Okay. Just letting you know if you're trying to do anything crazy with lineups tonight that, that's in play. All right, Greg, let me tell you my highest exposed cheap player. I already know who it's going to be, but I'm going to tell you anyway. And I'm not including defense or kicker because I have a lot of Jake Moody. I think that's fine. I have a lot of Josh Carty. I think that's fine as well. Both kickers in this game to me actually look pretty good. So earlier in the day, it was Tutu Atwell. That is not the case anymore. I just have, how like, if you were to throw something into a trash can and bear with me, right? I don't know, like say cereal or something, like dry cereal, and you hear it all like bank off of everything at the top of the can and settle at the bottom. You know what I'm talking?
Yeah, I'm so curious where you're going with this.
Well, I had to scroll all the way to the bottom, and then there were just like 15 guys under 2,000 that I all have like between 5 and 10%. So those are the Cheerios that made it to the bottom of the trash can, grouped themselves together, and there they lie.
Yeah, just
maybe not the best way to describe it, but I think you understand where I'm going here. I don't have any significant exposure to a single player right now that is not a defense or a kicker, who is Kobe Parkinson is my highest exposed player below 5K that isn't a kicker.
So I have over 20% of Colby Parkinson. So he's the one guy for me that I do get a decent amount of for cheap. But to your point also, I have Davis Allen in some lineups, Hunter Long, Blake Corum, because his role has been super weird. You never know when he's just going to get some touches all of a sudden. Chris Conley, Tutu Atwell, Kyle Juszczyk, and then just 2 to 3% of Ronnie Rivers, Eric Sauber, Jacob Cowing, just a bunch of guys who are $200 to $600. So I do see the exact same thing in my lineups. Just the one exception being I do have over 20% of Colby Parkinson. So if somebody was building lineups and saying, hey, I need a punt, is there somebody you prefer? My answer is Colby Parkinson.
Yeah. Well, technically he'd be mine too, but I wouldn't say it with heavy conviction. There's nobody very good down there is the truth. Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Davis Allen, Kobe Parkinson, Ricky Pearsall, Conley, Cowing, like this is where you probably just let the tools do the bulk of the work. That's what I'm doing on this slate for guys like that. I'm not, there's a lot of times where I'm okay injecting my own thoughts, maybe boosting a guy, capping a guy, changing projections on some of these cheaper guys, thinking they get more work based off of recent trends, recent snaps, routes, targets, you name it. I don't think there's anyone here that I'm willing to do that with. Are you?
Nah, just the only thing I would say, and I know this isn't in reference to the cheap guys, but is just I wouldn't want to be too heavily invested in Isaac Orendo. I don't feel good enough about his health.
That I would agree with. Sure. Plus, they know that they can kind of just get guys in and out of that offense, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In the backfield, at least. Hey, by the way, guys, we got 60%, 65% off everything college football. There's Matt Gajewski told me this morning, there's 22 slates coming up. So Sims Max, 65% off. Hear me out, even if you're not a CFB player, because I wish I could in Pennsylvania. They nuked it. They got rid of it years ago, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's like when I was actually following college football for the first time in a long time. The screenshots that we've had from Hall of Fame, we have basketball. There was a lot of baseball, obviously, football, you name it, hockey. We have not seen anything more recently than college football and people saying that Gajewski has the best projections, that the Sims are the best. You're talking multiple 50K wins, 25, 15, a lot of $2,000 wins just in the past week with Matt's tools. And he said on this morning's show, Greg, he goes, look, I guarantee you there is not a person on earth that puts more time into college football projections than me. And if Matt, Mr. Humility, is willing to say that, I believe it. I also know because he goes above and beyond. Jordan's throwing him up on the screen right now. I wouldn't bullshit you. He goes above and beyond, this guy, to make sure that he's unearthing like legit everything to make sure that those small little pieces that make the difference and help you win in such an insane sport with so many moving pieces. He does all of that work. Then you have those projections in the sim. You have our ownership. You have all of that, Greg. So 65% off, heck of an awesome deal going into bowl season.
I also won a college football GPP, 4 weeks ago or something like that. I don't know shit about any of these players. I just run stuff through the Sims with Matt's projections. I play whatever the hell it is I get out of it, and it's gone pretty well for me, including a GPP win this year. And yeah, certainly, of course, we got our guy BMAC 588 up there up top because there's no sport that he doesn't end up finishing towards the. Towards
is that Wallyballs?
That is Wallyballs.
Jesus, that guy. That guy. Yeah, I don't understand it. It's amazing though. But links in the description and chat, guys. All bowl season you got covered. 65, massive discount, and really, really cool tools. Or sign up with any of our sportsbook partners. First link in the description, and get any month of anything you want for free of the core $100 value. Follow the 4 simple steps. Click claim offer. Sign up on any of those books. Deposit. Usually it's $5 or $10. Collect your bonus bets or any promo they give you, which is just icing on the cake. And then simply take a screenshot of your first settled bet. Do it tonight. Bet it live. Who cares? The moment that first bet settles, screenshot it and screenshot us your welcome email. Send it to support@stokastic.com. Let us know what sport you want. You do 5 sports books, you got 5 months of any sport you want. It's a beautiful thing. So a lot of different ways to get involved. All those links are down there. Join the Discord. It comes along with all of this. And if you have questions, hit Greg up, hit me up. We're happy to help you. All right. I don't want to spend a ton of time on kickers, but I will tell you right now that they will be a mainstay in many of my lineups tonight.
The kickers. Am I getting to a lot of the kickers today?
I have a good amount of Jake Moody.
Yeah, I have some. I don't have an egregious amount or anything like that. I'm a little bit overweight to both of the kickers, but it's nothing excessive. I actually have a good amount of the 49ers defense. I get some more of the 49ers defense than either of the kickers, which I actually like. I like it. We've got Bosa coming back. You've also got a pass-happy offense in the Rams. So that always is something that's going to create opportunities for sacks and possibly for turnovers. So I don't have an issue with the kickers, but I actually prefer the 49ers defense at a cheaper price point to both of them.
No issues with that. I will tell you why, though, that I like the kickers today. This could absolutely turn into one of those games where you see a lot of field goal opportunities. I don't care if Jake Moody hasn't been great. None of that means a thing to me. But more than anything, like, how much of a needle do you have to thread to hit on some of those cheap guys, like, for them to get there? The Davis Allens, the Atwells, the Robinsons, who's not even that cheap, Pearsall, who's not even that cheap. Like, when I go into that kicker range, right, which is just below the dead zone, you know, we've termed it the dead zone, all those backup quarterbacks. And I look at it and I go, okay, so I have Moody at 52, Cardi at 5,000, Pearsall's 48. So basically the same price. Robinson's basically the same price. Keyshawn Vaughn, Blake Corum are in the 3K range. Atwell's 26. Make an argument that's a decent spot. Juszczyk, they don't want to use him like that. So then, yes, you have Parkinson, Allen, Tyler Johnson, Whittington, these type of guys, Eric Saubert, Jacob Cowing, Chris Conley. I mean, those are guys, Greg, you're legitimately hoping for 1 target, 2 targets, and one of them happens to be a crazy. Who was it? God, chat will tell me if you can't. Who's the one that scored the touchdown for Baltimore against the Chargers that tiptoed down the sideline? He was essentially unowned, dirt cheap, and it was just one of those things. Was it Wallace?
Yes, it was Wallace.
It was, right?
Yeah,
Tylan Wallace? Yeah. Who had been playing like 15% of snaps. That's what you're hoping for. So that's why I'm getting to a good amount of kickers.
Yeah. And he also had multiple big plays that game. I just pulled up the box score. So yeah, just talk about random shit that happens in primetime games so far. He had 3 catches for 115 yards and a touchdown that game. It's the only touchdown he scored all year. It also is more than 50% of receiving yards for the season. He has 183 receiving yards overall. 115 of them came in that one game, with 84 coming on one play. So actually almost half his receiving yards for the entire season came on that one play.
Incredible. So yeah, you're playing for something insane like that. And if you hit on it, good stuff. But I'm basically in the 5 to 10% range for all those guys, and overweight to the kickers. I'm okay with that. What about the quarterbacks in this spot? Usually it's kind of self-explanatory. I get a lot of them at flex. I usually don't get a lot of them at captain.
Yeah. So the exception being that I don't get the Stafford in the captain spot, which not surprising. He's somebody who these quarterbacks, we talk about on our showdown slates all the time, Laffy, the ones with no rushing upside. It's so hard for there to be a path for them to be in the optimal lineup, because they have to throw for 300 plus yards and multiple touchdowns while not having the wide receivers outscore them when wide receiver upside is higher than quarterback upside. So Stafford's a no for me in the captain spot, but Brock Purdy actually has rushing upside, and I do get to him a decent amount in the captain spot. I have, of all the captains on the slate, I get the most of Puka Nacua, but I have the second most of Brock Purdy, who really has probably more rushing upside than most people recognize him to have. Last week, it wasn't the best for, well, actually, the last couple of games haven't been the best rushing games for him, but the game script was terrible for rushing upside. Last week, they win 38-13. No reason for him to be running the football. He has 5 carries for 11 yards. The week before against Buffalo, they get killed. They lose 35-10. 2 carries for 4 yards. But you look at some of his other games before that. Against Seattle, 5 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. Against the Cowboys, 8 carries for 56 yards and a touchdown. Against the Chiefs, 8 carries for 27 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's not just that he's somebody who is pretty athletic with the capability of having some 10-plus yard runs. It's also the volume in some of these close games where you see him with 8 to 10 carries in some competitive games. So I do like Brock Purdy in the captain spot because there is a rushing ceiling there. And also one of the top props on OddsShopper for tonight's game, it's over 17.5 rushing yards for Brock Purdy.
I don't hate it. Especially because you wonder, do they just go away from Deebo in those spots? Not that you're going to have a lot of these designed runs for Purdy. Don't get me wrong. But the way I have it, Purdy is actually my second most exposed at captain. He's also far behind. So when I say like, I don't get a ton of captain, what I mean is that beyond Puka Nacua, I have a group of guys in between, like 5 guys in between 10 and 14%.
Yeah, let's see my final exposure to captain. Yeah, so I like Puka. I like Brock Purdy. And it's the same for me. It's pretty spread out behind them. But the 2 guys, and if somebody's building a single entry lineup, which is going to be a lot of you, and you want to know who to play in that captain spot, DraftKings, my favorite captain, it's Puka Nacua. FanDuel, I lean a little bit more towards Brock Purdy just because of the half-point PPR bonus. But those are my 2 priorities as multiplier options.
You know, I saw people asking in chat about punting at captain. I'll be honest. If it works, good for you. And I don't say good for you as like a fuck you, good for you. I mean it. Like, good for you. That's great. Yeah, whenever someone says good for you, it sounds like you're being condescending, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man, good for you.
So I wanted to clarify. I'm just not getting to it. Like I don't see the answer to go really cheap. It's funny because even if you wanted to be like, what about Patrick Taylor? Well, he's not that cheap. If you wanted to tell me you're going crazy and playing a $2,000 Patrick Taylor, I'd say have at it in these large fields. But where else do you go? Like what are the punt options that you could play at captain that would look decent? I just don't have any.
Yeah, I mean, the one that's most viable, I've 1 out of 150 lineups with him, but Colby Parkinson, there's a chance he catches a touchdown and then other studs were to go off. But once again, that's 1 out of 150 lines, 0.7% exposure to him in the captain spot. Other than that, no, I'm with you. I'm not really looking at punts at the captain.
Porzingis said Tutu might be fine at captain. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. Nico said legendary Blake Corum captain spot. Yeah, look, if you wanted to get insane and assume that like Kyron in a huge game for the Rams is just not going to get the work that he's gotten in the past, maybe. But again, like if you're making these decisions, you're doing this solely because you think it's just going to be wildly different than everybody else. You know,
it's not needed. The other thing too is because of some of the guys that we like as pay up options. I don't know about what your lineups are looking like, but I get to a good amount of Puka. I don't have a ton of Cooper Kupp. I don't have a ton of Kyron Williams. And then the guys that we like as spend ups for the 49ers aren't actually all that expensive. The quarterbacks aren't super expensive for this game. Jawan Jennings isn't expensive. George Kittle isn't expensive. Talk about Deebo. He's $7,600. You don't even really need, like, what are you getting by punting at captain unless you're trying to build a lineup that has Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp in it.
It's actually a great point. I was looking through my lineups and Matt and I were building them out this morning. And at first I thought this is going to be really tough, but then you realize, all right, so obviously you're never going to be able to just play all of the studs, Greg. But at the same time, with Kittle's price and Deebo's price and Garendo's price, it's actually not that hard at all to build lineups that you like. I just so happen to be funneled into a lot of flexed kickers, which I'm okay with. And we've seen quality success with that in a lot of these primetime games. The one guy, here's a fun one. Chat, tell me as well. We still got 1,400 people watching. By the way, shout out to you guys for sticking with us to the end. Appreciate you. If there is one guy that I'm most underweight on among the top priced guys, and I'm only still 10% below the field, but only have 18% and 2% at captain, 20% total, is in fact Cooper Kupp. That's the one that scares me the most because Kupp's always live to have a big game. And right now, all of the positive sentiment has shifted towards Puka Nacua after seeing his last couple performances.
Yeah, I have 3% of Kupp in the captain spot right now, 25% in the flex. So I'm a good deal underweight to him. And it's like you, I'm getting a good amount of exposure to Nacua. So the Sims preferring Nacua, not getting me to Kupp as much. And can't play everybody. There's just some spot where you kind of have to make choices on who it is and who it is that you're not playing. And it's Puka Nacua over Cooper Kupp for me. It wouldn't be shocking to me either if Kupp has a big game. That's what beats me today.
Yep, same. Our friend Matt Gajeski in the chat. Matt, did you hear that wonderful, wonderful read I just did, espousing the virtues of Matthew Gajeski? I hope you did. And I hope you remember that next time we do shows together. I hope you do.
Yeah, I don't know. Phrasing, guys. All these people saying they'll take a shot on Pearsall. I don't know about that phrasing.
I'm pretty sure Matt was just, you know how I said like the good for you is condescending? Pretty sure Matt was being condescending. He said, I heard it. I appreciate you. Of course, man. And I'm obviously kidding. I won't hold that over your head. Everything I said is true. And you call me Matthew like my mother does. Yeah. Now look, Pearsall has, I want you to take a guess Matt mentioned this morning. Over the last 4 games, how many yards does Ricky Pearsall have?
Ooh. But a lot of those 49ers games have been late ones where you just end up watching it more on red zone because that's all that's
Take a guess. How many yards over his last 4 games? Stop filibustering.
70.
5.
Oof.
No,
I thought I was going low.
Not 75. 5.
5-0. I thought I was going low by saying
No. 0-5. Or 5.0.
It's not great.
No. You thought you were going low. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Someone said Purdy hasn't thrown very much, dude. Yeah, I mean, you're right, but guess what? His pass attempts prop isn't 38 today. It's 30, 29.5 in some spots. So, yeah. Am I convinced that that's the case tonight? No, I'm not convinced anything's the case on any night. I've been playing Showdown and main slates long enough to know that I'm not convinced of anything. But I'd be or Greg or Matt, any of us would be full of shit to just like take hard stands and be like, this is the day Ricky Pearsall goes off, because there's absolutely nothing to base it off of. So if you're doing it, you have something to base it off of. Sure. I just don't.
Here's the bull case for Brock Purdy, because somebody said he hasn't been throwing the ball a ton. First, the last 2 games were blowouts. A blowout win, a blowout loss. It's just there's no need. He's also been banged up. If you remember one of those games, I forget which one it was, but he hurt something, and then the game was also a blowout. So there's another reason for them to be cautious with him. But also, no Trent Williams. He's the most important player on the offensive line as far as run blocking goes. There's no Jordan Mason. There's no Christian McCaffrey. Isaac Guerendo's playing after being listed as questionable, coming back on a 4-day turnaround here, short week because of Thursday Night Football. I think all of that could lend to the 49ers just deciding, hey, our best way to beat a division rival today, it's going to be by throwing the football and leaning on Brock Purdy, because the running game kind of in shambles between the offensive line and then all of the running backs being hurt.
Yeah, but Trent Williams is a bigger miss in pass blocking, so I don't know. Yeah, look, again, it could be true, but you know what it comes down to? You're not paying Tutu Atwell price for Ricky Pearsall. You're paying the 5K range, the high 4K range. We'll see. This should be fun. If okay. And before you guys in chat go, I'm going to ask Greg, I'm going to ask you guys as well. At the same time, we'll close it out with this. And shout out to Jordan for producing as always. Who is, if you had to guess, you're going to say Parkinson. the one guy that you could see going off in the cheap range today.
Yeah, the honest answer is nobody really. I think Parkins is most live to have a 7-yard touchdown catch.
Yeah. I'd go Atwell because once in a while you see those deep targets and he's super cheap. Just like one bit deep shot to Tutu Atwell and you go, motherfucker. Yeah. Anyway, appreciate you guys hanging out. I can't tell you how many times I've done that on these slates. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Have a great rest of the night. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Sim Strategy Tournament Edition. That's when all the good stuff happens. And of course, live before. Finally, more than a couple basketball games, right? 8 tomorrow?
Yeah, regular basketball slate tomorrow. So that's the first one in about a week that we've had.
Yeah. Should be nice. Bye-bye.